Okay, so now we will make a little bit more advanced version of a crouch and implement it into our system. We have a lot on our plate, so let's jump into it. If we venture into our player blueprints, character blueprint player, here we can see the basis of the player. So we have the look and the move and the jump. We do not have a crouch. So this is the enhanced input system, and we need to add crouch so we can expose it via the subsystem here. So going into the content browser and into the input actions, we need to do a crouch. It's very similar to jump. We press a button and we jump, we press a button and we crouch. So we can make a Control D and name it crouch. This will be located in this one needs to have a wrapper, and the wrapper is an input mapping context. We have made a new one called menu, and there's a one called weapons that's only activated when we hold a specific weapon. And this one is the default for when the player pawn, the humanoid, is activated. So opening this one up, we can see that we have the jump and the move and the look that we just investigated in the character blueprint. So let's add a new one and name it, choose input action crouch that we just made. We need to have a button for that. So I'm clicking this little keypad thing here and hitting control, the left control. We could actually, no, we're just gonna leave it at that. Could add more or less, but we're just gonna leave it at this. Like so. So if we look at here, we have the space bar. It's exactly the same. Closing this one down, saving it, and closing it. So now we're here. We have something added to the default one, and the default one is loaded on begin play, so we should have it accessible now. So if I'm right clicking and typing input action crouch, we get this one. So here it is, placing it down here, and so if I trigger, I want to check if I want to crouch basically. So writing crouch. You probably noticed that we had an uncrouch there as well. So having that one on crouch, that. So we need to somehow be able to toggle between these. There's multiple waves. We could do a simple flip-flop, that is a flow control. But this it will not be recommended, because we could be, the game could uncrouch for us. So this basically works when the first time we press, we crouch, the second time we press, we uncrouch. But the game could have already uncrouched us for various reasons, and so that would break the flip-flop. So we need to be a little bit more fine-tuned and a little bit more professional about it, so we can actually check if the character currently is crouched. So we have the character movement here that is checking the state of things. So I'm dragging it out, dragging the character movement and dropping it into our canvas, onto our canvas, dragging out from the data pin here and writing is crouching. Nav moment, navigation moment is crouching, which basically spits out a bool, one or zero value that could direct us via a branch. Holding down B and left clicking, getting this branch. It's almost like an if statement in code, but not exactly like an if statement. So we're hooking in this bool here. And if we are crouching, if the player is currently crouching and we press crouch, then we should uncrouch. And if we're not currently crouching when we press, then we should crouch. So switching these two. And we also need to click the character movement here, and if we search for crouch, we get various different options here. Crouch. We have a crouch half height. How tall should we be when we crouch? Our goal is to squeeze in under 1 meter. That's basically, it's for us to decide, but I'm deciding that our player metrics should dictate when the player is crouching, they should be able to be below 1 meter. So they can take cover behind a 1 meter cover, or they can get into a ventilation shaft that is 1 meter high. So the half height, half of the capsule, the collider, is 40 centimeter, meaning that the entire capsule when you're crouched is 80 centimeters. So let's make that slightly higher, 45. So when I'm crouching, the half height is 45, double that, it's 90. Then we have 10 centimeters to go on when squeezing in into a 1 meter shaft. Walk speed while crouching could be a little bit lower, 300 centimeters per second. It's actually quite fast. It's a little bit Unreal Tournament kind of fast. So I'm just gonna lower it slightly to 200. And then we have this one, can walk off ledges when crouching. So this is basically, if I'm crouching and I'm approaching a ledge, will I fall down or will I get stuck? We will choose to be able to fall down, so we can crouch and then fall down to a ledge below us. So we give it for the player to decide, so the game isn't deciding if we should be able to move past the ledge or not. And then finally, perhaps the most important one, can we crouch? Yes, we should be able to crouch. Compile. So now, if I'm just saving all our stuff, it was only the blueprint. And hitting play. Moving around, hitting control. Something happened. We're actually crouching. Excellent. And but it was quite jarring and a little bit snappy, so we will fix that. But first, let's have somewhere to test our crouching capabilities. I'm setting the grid here to 1 meter, taking this box. It's a really nice block-out box that we could use when blocking out our game worlds. It has a really nice pivot point in the corner. So I'm Alt dragging it out. And then I'm going into details, and it's scaled, properly scaled. It's really nice to scale it in blockouts, but we're resetting it to the original scale of 111, which is actually a perfect 1 meter cube. It's offset here. We have we have several different quick commands. One quick command is to hit end to snap it to the ground below, so it's basically traces down and see where it should land. And we also have shift and no, not shift and control end will actually snap it to the closest grid that we have chosen. So we have chosen 1 meter grid, so now we snapped it to that grid. So it will be easier to block out a quick little tunnel for us. So placing it like this, and then I'm alt dragging a new one to there, alt dragging up there, and hitting. We have the W, E, R commands. W is the move tool, the E is the rotate tool and R is the scale tool. So choosing the R and scaling it out, we have a little ventilation shaft. Saving and playing. And if I'm crouching here, I can't get in. We set the half crouch to 45, so we should be 90, but we are not. So we can investigate that slightly by going into our character blueprint player here. And what's blocking us? It's actually the capsule component here. This one is the collider. So we can investigate how it looks by unchecking the hidden in game here. So unchecking this tick box and compiling and going back into the game world. So now I can see some lines here. So if I'm going here, pressing against it, hitting control, pressing against it, can't get in. We're hitting F8 to investigate. We can see our sleeper arms, but we can also see that our capsule is indeed higher, but it's completely spheric, and that is a clue to why it's not working. So venturing back into the character blueprint player, we came to the conclusion that the crouch half height was 45. So why doesn't it work? If we click the mesh, or no, not the mesh, the capsule component, and investigate here, what kind of half height and height do the capsule component have? So the capsule half height is 96 centimeters, so almost 1 meter, so the character is almost 2 meter high. So it's good that it's almost, because then we can have exactly 2 meter level design and the character will be able to get under it. But the capsule half height here is it's obviously more than 45, but the capsule radius is 55. So if we hover here, we can see that half height from center to capsule to the end, this cannot be less than capsule radius. So the radius is 55. So if we place the radius to 45, the radius actually becomes thinner here. But now we can crouch 45. So going back into the gym, crouching, now we get underneath. The camera clips into the world, but we will adjust that while we deal with the jarring crouch snapping. So let's do that now. So we have this snapping, we need to address it. We actually have 2 more events, when we crouch and when we uncrouch. So when and that is when the engine triggers an uncrouch and an end crouch. So we can search for on start crouch event, on start crouch, and then we have the same event for end crouch. So on end crouch, no, on end event, on end crouch. So these 2 triggers when the engine tells us to trigger, and why do we need those? So if we go into the tunnel here, and in the tunnel I hit uncrouch. So now I'm actually not crouching anymore, and I'm exiting the tunnel. The capsule uncrouch itself. So first off, we need to kind of save where the camera currently is located when we start the game, basically. So we have an event begin play here. We cast into some stuff that is irrelevant for the crouch that we're about to do, but after that we can populate it some more to save where the first person camera is. So pushing out the first person camera and getting the location. So get location, and we have get relative location here. So choosing that one, but we're actually only after, we will alter the camera in height, and that is Z. Z is up in Unreal. So we can right click here, this pin here, this data pin here, and split it. So now we see, instead of a vector, we see 3 different floats. So it's the Z that we want to save. So I can right click that one and promote to a variable. Relative location C. We can have that to be a little bit more logical of a name. So let's name it camera location C. Standing. The pawn entering into the game will be standing. It will not be crouching from start, so we're saving a standing position here. And while we're at it, we can also save where it should be while crouching. So let's mark this one and hit Ctrl D to duplicate it and name it crouching. So we have 2 different variables, crouching, and I'm setting this one as well on startup. So here we can kind of adjust it, so when we are crouching, how far below, even further down should the camera be. So the thing is with crouching is we're altering the capsule. It's the capsule that we're altering. So the camera actually follows suit because the camera is attached to the capsule. So the camera tried to get down, or it got down when we were crouching, but not far enough. We want to kind of push it down even further. So the system is already doing most of the work, but we just need to add some numbers. So therefore, we can use the standing thing. It might sound confusing, but the standing is actually there all the time. So the standing is, we alter it some more. We push it even further down. So we're subtracting a number from it, and this is a tweakable number, but we're going with 30 extra centimeters. So 30 centimeters extra down when we have triggered crouch. All right, and then to make that would be to kind of snap it into place, but we talked about having a smooth interpolation in between these points. To interpolate between the points, we actually need yet another variable. So we can create that right from the get-go here as well. So I'm duplicating it one more time, and camera Z location while altering it. So I'm gonna name it current. These are just names. So it's just name standard for 1, 2. So it makes sense for oneself. And this one will hopefully make sense for you when we're done. So I'm just setting this one on startup. And this one is less important where it's supposed to be. But let's start with the current position, obviously, where I'm currently at when I'm standing. So now we have 3 different variables. And we can begin to code the smooth interpolation of the crouch. Saving it. So here we have the crouch. So we can begin by using these snapping behaviors when we start crouch and when we end crouch. And this one is the altering process when the system in itself scales it from standing to crouching. So with this one, on start crouch, we will set the current. We will set the current on both ones, so we can drag it out and choose set on both of these. Control copy. So both of these will set it, but something else. So this is the snapping behaviors. So when starting crouch, we will take the standing and add that one to the adjustments. So we add the saved standing position to how much it's adjusted, and that one will be our new current value. So this is still just the snapping thing. We haven't gotten to the part where we're interpolating it. And for the on end crouch, we're taking the scale and subtracting and setting that one to the current, to snapping it to the correct position. So this is the prelude of it. So these are just to save the new positions, and now we will get to actually interpolate between the positions, and we will use a tick for that. This blueprint ticks to be able to move and correspond and react to the behaviors. So it's not that dangerous to add tick to this blueprint, but in general we should be afraid of ticking too much. But we will right click and add a tick, not rick, tick, event tick. So when ticking, this one is so important, so we could actually add it up here, because we might want to tick with other stuff, so we don't want to tie it too close to only be affecting crouch. So when ticking, we just we would just want to add crouch here, but we want the code to be down here, so therefore we make a custom event and name it on let's say here on tick crouch, on tick crouch, and we can correctly spell it, that would be better, crouch, on tick crouch. And this is just a custom event that is waiting to be triggered, so we still need to trigger it somehow, and we will trigger it with the correct tick. So we're doing this just for the scalability. If we later on would want to use tick, we want it in one place so we can keep track of everything that is going on. So here we are triggering on tick crouch, on tick crouch. So each frame we're triggering this custom event, and we can make like so. I just added a comment box by pressing C. So now this one is triggered every frame. So what should we do with that? Well, we need to alter the camera position, and the camera position, we have the camera here, it's the first person camera. So this one should be altered. The position of it or the location of it should be altered, but only in this specific actor, and not relative to the world, but relative to the interior of this actor. So location, set location, but we have different options here. We have set world location and set relative location, and we want it, as I said, relative to the actor, the interior sphere of the actor. It's easier to show here. So here it should move. So this one is 0, 0, 0. So in relation to this origo point, not in relationship to the world origo point. And where we only interested in the Z, so we can once again right click and split it. So we're only interested in altering this position. And how to do that? Well, interpolation can be done with a number of different ways, but we're using we could do it with a timeline, but we're using tick now because it's safe in this blueprint. So we're using an interp node. We can do interp interp. We have several different interps. We have rotating interps and all kinds of interps here. But we're interested in f-interp 2, float interp 2. And the difference between interp 2 and interp 2 constant is that interp 2 has an ease in and ease out to make it a little bit smoother. So we're obviously interested in this one. This one seems fairly complex to know where to start and where to go. But where to start? Well, it's our current position. So where we're currently at should be where we're starting. And the target is a little bit more complex. We could argue that we could have the standing position to be the target, to always go for the standing, but we did alter the standing and the crouching because we added this minus. That's what we're after, so we need to take that one in account. So the target should actually be yet another variable, because we somehow need to have one target to rule them both, to both be for standing and for crouching. So we once again click this, go over here, and I'm clicking Control Duplicate and adding target. So this target should, if we pull it out and setting it, so when we on start crouch, well, then the target should be the crouch, the saved crouch position. But I think you're guessing it. On end crouch, the target should be on the end position for standing. I hope it starts to kind of make sense. So therefore, we should shift this one, and we don't need to delete it. There's a nifty little thing here, so we can actually grab the target and just drop it on the node, not on the text, but on the node here, and it switches. It can be a convenience thing when changing a lot of variables. The delta time is the amount of time between each tick to make it more fluent and non-dependent on your specific tick rate. So there's a node for that. This one, it spits out the value here. So each tick, it's calculating how far it is between each tick on your machine. So we could drag a long node like this, but that's inconvenient. So therefore, we're gonna use the node delta time get world delta seconds and hook this one in, because that one is exactly the same. The interp speed is also something to be aware of. The higher it is, the faster it goes, but 0 makes it just skip this interp node completely. So yes, let's set it on 10. This is a tweakable number. So hooking it into C would be wrong, because we're making it on tick, so we need to constantly update the current. Each tick needs to update the current. So after each one, when we're taking the current and moving it ever so slightly towards target, we need to set a new current. So, and this current should be that. Can't hook it in like that. Get, set. So we tick once, we grab where I'm at currently and move it one step closer to the target, updating the position to that new target, and then next tick, we're grabbing it. Okay, now I'm at a new position, moving it even closer and closer and closer and closer until I've reached the destination. That's it. I think it will be a little bit jarring because our X position is slightly off. Looking at this, if I'm clicking on the camera, I can actually see that the X position is -10, but we can just see how it feels. It feels okay. Now we have a nice smooth interpolation, but now I'm interpolating into the center of the capsule. And that means I'm actually intersecting with a gun into the wall. So we could hard code that value in, and we might just do that for this specific one, and then we can make adjustment to that later on perhaps. But moving into the character blueprint, so it's this problem here. So if I'm setting -10 here, we might need to take a look what happened up here. Now that should be okay, because that one is -10, but we're just saving that one. So it's just a matter of where we're pushing it. So this one should be okay. So let's see if that one fixed it. We're no longer intersecting with the gun. Not as much, at least. We're intersecting a little bit. And intersecting guns into walls is a bit of a hassle. But this is so small, so for now we will definitely ignore this little feature here. Alright. So that was a smooth interpolation. But we have one optimization thing to deal with, because this one is always ticking and always hammering on setting this location. So if we're not crouching, then we do not want to hammer on this feature. So how to do that? Well, we could just have a branch here. So if and make some logic to when it should be let through or not. So we could make a compare. So if I'm standing, for example, I'm getting standing, and if the current one is the same as the standing, then we don't have any reason to interpolate, and we shouldn't do it. So if these two are the same, then we should not be let through. But if they're not the same, false. So if they are true, then we should do nothing. But if they are not true, then we should tick. So we could make, if I'm doing an equal here, we have an equal here, but we're interpolating and slowly reaching the destination. So we could do a nearly equal float. Near equal float. And hook that one in. But that's only for the standing. We need to have the same one for crouching. So grabbing in the crouch and the current. The current is there, so we don't need to kind of drag it in again. So I'm just copy pasting this one. So if the crouching is the same as the current as well, then we do an OR. So if it's either exactly or very, very close to standing, then we shouldn't tick. And or if it's really, really close to crouching, then we shouldn't tick either. There we go. Works. And now it's not ticking frequently either, so we have done some optimization to our code. So that's really, really good. So let's bundle this together, because this is the crouch. I'm hitting C and doing crouch. We can do one final tweak to this nice little crouch feature, and that is if we're in crouch, I'm crouching, and well, when I'm crouching, I'm pressing jump. Nothing happens, and that doesn't feel good from a gameplay perspective. So when pressing jump, we want to check if we're crouching, and then we should kind of stand up and jump. So we can take this branch here, character movement crouching, copy paste, and hook it into the trigger and check, are we in crouch? If we're not in crouch, then we should jump. But if we're in crouch, then we should uncrouch. I'm copying this one, pasting it here, and we should uncrouch. And regrettably, we can't just hook it in like this, because it won't have time to react. It takes too long for it to do the uncrouching because of the interpolation and everything, and the active feature of pulling this one off. So we need to delay it. So we can pull out here and hit delay. We have a delay, and we have delay until next tick. Delay, then we enter a second value. So we only need to wait ticks. But this one isn't enough either. So we need to wait 2 ticks for the uncrouching to correctly calculate itself. And then we trigger the jump. So 2 ticks, 1 tick isn't enough, but with 2 ticks we have a nice sensation of it. So I'm crouching, and then I'm hitting jump, and I do a jump. It's almost like I'm putting in some extra force in it. And if you would prefer, it could kind of be like, if I'm crouching and jumping, I would add extra boost to it, but we won't. So that wraps it up. So now we have made a really nice crouch feature with all the bells and whistles for it. So that's probably it for this one. Take care, live long and prosper. Until the next one.